Hello, and welcome to the Kicked in the Crotch edition of Par 3. It is Matt Brown. It is Stephen Andress. In all seriousness, this is John Deere Classic for us this week, brought to you by thelines.com. So please go in. Everything we do absolutely free over there. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so. I joke because both Stephen and I had runner-up finishes last week to go along with my runner-up finish the week before that as well. So 2 runner-up finishes in a row. Stephen, doesn't feel great, but hey, listen, it's a new week. It's a new tournament. We can come in. We can try to go after what is probably going to be another low-scoring event and a course that should be gettable. So if you want the full course preview, John does one of the very best ones in all the industry. Head on over to thelines.com. That is absolutely free, but each and every week I do 3 plays. Stephen does 3 plays. We give you the par 3 here. And Stephen, kick things off, buddy. Let's go.
All right. I promise that whoever I say on this podcast this week, I will still also put in the Discord, because last week I said the winner on this podcast, Cam Davis, and then in the final hour on Wednesday night, took him off my card for somebody else.
Oh, boy.
So that, double kick in the nether regions. So not doing that again this week. I promise I'm never doing that again in my career, because I just can't take the emotional trauma of it. So I am going back to a guy you mentioned last week, Matt, that I did have on the card that finished in that big group of guys that finished second at the Rocket Mortgage. It's Davis Thompson. And over the past 36, the past 24 rounds, he's still very solidly in the top 5 of my rankings. You know, taking a bunch of stats this week that I care about most, that I'm pulling from John Hasselbauer's fantastic preview of this course over at TPC Deer Run. Things like, the staple strokes gain on approach, birdies are better gain. We expect a low score at this event. Strokes gain on par 5s, ball striking. So he's elite in basically all those categories. Like you said last week, Matt, he's pretty much green across the board for me. And it's hard to find that in a field that is lacking depth and quality like the John Deere Classic typically is. So if you look more specifically at his profile over the last few weeks, missed cut at the RBC Canadian, pops back to a 27th at Memorial, finishes top 10 at the U.S. Open, and then second place at the Rocket Mortgage, gaining strokes on approach in 3 straight events, gaining strokes putting in 2 straight events, which I really care about in a birdie fest, which is what we should have here. And the driver's still a weapon, and it's not like some of these other bombers like Cam Champ and Jake Knapp who spray it all over the place and need wide fairways. I think Davis Thompson's a little more consistent than that. He gained 4 strokes off the tee in the Rocket Mortgage, so I think that's going to be a weapon for him this week to possibly have some really short wedges into greens and maybe get this win for him for the Georgia Bulldog.
I should say he is 4th overall in my model this week. I approve of that play. Definitely like Davis Thompson again this week, and weaker field yet again, so he should have an opportunity, right? I mean, like his really only problem with some of these dudes, they're really good. They're just not elite. And I think Davis Thompson is a dude that in a field where it's pretty down can go in and certainly make some noise. A guy that was super high in my model this week, I can't ignore, Ben Griffin. You go across, and if it weren't for good drive percentage, which I weighed pretty heavily this week, Ben Griffin might actually be inside the top 2 or 3 for me, but he is 69th in this field in good drive percentage, which beats him down a little bit to about 7th overall for me in this field. But if you look at Ben Griffin on approach, he's inside the top 20, and putting, which again, this could turn into a putting competition. He's inside the top 30. And then you just kind of go across the board to all the things like you're talking about, birdie or better percentage inside the top 20, strokes gain on par 4s inside the top 20, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And also Ben Griffin, not too great on the tough courses, but stroke gained on easy courses, also inside the top 20 in this field. So a dude that just consistently ranks out inside the top 20 of a full field event for all the stats that I feel are important this week. So Ben Griffin at long odds. I'm going to go ahead and throw in a ticket on him and see if it's can't get close for us and we can monetize something come Sunday.
Yeah, I think we should also give a little bit of context here that, some of the guys I bet this week are going to be at odds that are long gone, because I was able to get a couple guys in before Patrick Cantlay withdrew, who was the 9-1 favorite on Monday morning. So some decisions had to be made after the fact that if you're just diving into the golf odds now today, you're probably going to have a shorter card because that 9-1 favorite's not there anymore. But Ben Griffin was certainly in consideration for me, Matt. He made my short list. He was top 5 for me over the past 36 rounds. Just opted to go with Davis Thompson a little higher up the board at 22-1, which made it harder to get more guys in that 50 to 60-1 range. So certainly understand where you're at with Ben Griffin for sure. Next guy for me is a little bit deeper down the board. Davis Thompson's 22-1 after Patrick Cantlay withdrew. Nick Dunlap went from 50 to now 35-1 for me. And I remind you that Nick Dunlap, not you, Matt, I know you know this, everybody else out there in golf world. This is a guy who won as an amateur earlier this year and is the first person to do that since Phil Mickelson. So that immediately put him on my radar as a guy that we should consider in the future, who is nowhere near his ceiling as a professional golfer, has gone through maybe some growing pains of learning what it's like to be a professional for the first time and traveling constantly and being alone on the tour after having college life and being with your buddies in a dorm room constantly and, going to parties at the sororities and fraternities. Well, now he's a professional golfer at a very young age. And he had some growing pains. He hasn't really performed all that well since that win in January at the American Express. Has not had a top 10 until last week at the Rocket Mortgage, although he did have an 11th in Houston and a 12th at the Memorial. So all that being said, when you pop in all the numbers into the modeling subscription that I have, he still ranks out top 10 for me in this field. And I really just had to ask myself, Matt, in a field of this quality and lack of, really top tier players, I think I just want to take chances on some guys who I think we haven't seen their ceiling yet, who may not currently have win equity, but potentially are breakout candidates in a smaller field like this with a bunch of guys who we've seen over and over again can't get to the finish line and can't close it out. So I'm willing to take some chances on some untapped potential. Nick Dunlap certainly falls into that category. Over the past 36 rounds, he is number 3 in this field in birdies or better gained. He is number 4 in strokes gained on par 5s and number 2 on par 5s from 550 to 600 yards, which we'll see more of on this course. So that immediately tells me he's among the elites in this field at scoring. Maybe it's just a matter of cleaning up the blow-up holes at a young age, and that's going to put him into win contention here. So Nick Dunlap, 35-1 for me this week.
I also have Dunlap on my card, and I'm also trying to just bet on the come here, right? I'm betting on the potential. If you look, Stephen, what's really been holding him back, he has been bad off the tee, and he's been really bad around the green. And if you look, though, the last 3 tournaments, gained a little bit 3 tournaments ago, lost just barely at the Travelers, and then he gained off the tee last week at the Rocket Mortgage. So maybe the driver figuring something out just a little bit where he was losing well over a stroke to the field with the driver for most of the tournaments over the course of this season. But again, a slight gain, a slight loss, and then a big gain off the tee. So maybe he figured something out with that driver. The around the green game is still bad, and that does concern me a little bit. But hey, we're talking about receptive greens here, Stephen, and you don't have to worry about your around the green game if you can just land it on the greens, right? And you can just hold these greens. And so I'm going to bet on the potential here and on the come that Dunlap maybe figured something out with that driver. And then also, we don't have to worry about that bad around the green game because he's going to be able to get it done with the just hitting the greens in regulation. So I like Dunlap as well this week. Justin Lauer, for me, is going to make the card. And yet another dude that as you go across that if it weren't for how heavily I weighted par 5 scoring, because there's only 3 par 5s. So I wanted dudes that could really go and take advantage of the 3 par 5s, considering we're talking about a par 71 this week. That said, he is, I'll fully admit, Lauer is 110th in this field in par 5 scoring. But you can look at that one of two ways, Stephen. I looked at it as like, hey, I wanted the dudes to go out and take advantage of the par 5s that they do have. Or you could say, yeah, he's 110th, but at least there's only 3 of them. There's not 4 of them. So it's not like he's losing on 4 of the holes. He's only losing on 3 of the holes to the rest of the field. So I think there's kind of 2 different ways to look at it. But then outside of that, he's really good across the board everywhere else of the stuff that I found important this week. And so Justin Lauer, again, I understand this tournament could be won and lost on the dudes that are able to take advantage of just the 3 par 5s out there. But maybe he runs on the right side of variance. Maybe he does a little bit better this week for all of that, because everything else I really do like. And if you look at easy scoring conditions, another guy that just thrives on these easy courses, he's 11th overall in this field in easy scoring conditions. And so, like, again, it's just a deal where, does he have win equity in a normal field tournament? Not really, but does he have equity in an easy scoring condition against a weaker field? I think he does. And so Justin Lauer made my outright card this week.
So I worked 1 year covering the Korn Ferry Tour, where I worked directly for the tour. I traveled around, covered the stories of these dream chasers, and Justin Lauer was a guy I got to know fairly well when I was out there. And let me tell you, just a class act. This is a guy who got to the final event of the year and literally had a putt on his final stroke of the season. And if he makes the putt, he gets his PGA Tour card. If he misses the putt, he doesn't get it. He misses the putt, he's devastated. But the guy that got the card in front of him was like his really good friend on the tour. And despite sobbing and having his dream busted on that day, went over to his friend, gave him a hug, congratulated him. Just pure class act, Justin Lauer. And then the next year came back, got his tour card, and almost made the playoffs here in recent years. So easy guy to root for. And he's not on my card this week, but if he wins, man, I will love it.
And Steven, it's just, again, in tournaments like this, like, I'm just looking for dudes that if they peak, they're going to get a chance, right? In all this. And so you kind of like go in and you look at Lauer, and it's just when everything's clicking for him in his game, we see an outright 8th finish. We start to see like these kind of, T18s, T whatever. There's a T3 in there at the Mexico Open. There's a T4 in Punta Cana. Yeah, it's like, so when everything's clicking, he is able to ascend that leaderboard. And like, again, for these longer shot outright guys, that's really what I'm looking at. Like, sure, is there cut potential? Yeah, absolutely. If he's not firing, he's going to get cut. But I can deal with that when I know that the upside is as high as it is. What you don't want is dudes whose upside, Steven, is like 30th or 40th. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you play your very best and you're going to finish 30th. Well, that doesn't do us any good. What we've seen with Lauer is when everything is clicking, he can get into that upper tier there on a Sunday. And again, that gives us some opportunities should he be able to put us in a position to monetize that ticket. So Justin Lauer on the card for me this week.
Yeah, could not care less if you finish 10th or 150th. Like, we're trying to find the winner here. And I won't, like, there are some people that say there's no difference between second and dead last when you're betting an outright. I won't go that far, because if you have him versus another guy at the end of a tournament, there's opportunity to make money there, even if he doesn't win the tournament, if you so choose. But we're chasing ceilings here. That's the point. So do not care if they have a higher floor. All I care about is ceiling. So your process and your strategy there is the right way to look at it, and everybody should be looking at it that way as well when you're betting outrights in golf. Last guy for me is a hunch. He's not modeling out well yet. He hasn't played enough events. He just turned pro recently, but he has lit up the amateur circuit to this point. It's Neil Shipley, the peak of physical fitness. Neil Shipley, the next the next John Daly, if you will. For guys like me, my next hero on the PGA Tour. Big fella out here crushing golf balls. What's interesting to me, finishes 26th at the U.S. Open after finishing 53rd at the Masters. But right after the U.S. Open, comes back to the Rocket Mortgage in a much weaker field and gains 5.1 on approach. Do that again in this field, and you're probably in the mix. So he lost strokes putting in the Rocket Mortgage, which is why he only finished 20th. Frankly, he just had a bad Sunday. He was right there near the top of the leaderboard going into the weekend. So maybe he pieces it together. He did gain strokes putting at the U.S. Open, so I'm not too concerned that like he's a guy like Kevin Yu or something who can never putt. And there's still 110-1 out there on him. So again, just taking a shot on a guy who may have great potential, who may have a high ceiling, who's already shown that he can have a week with his irons on approach among the best in this field. So just a bit of a hunch here, but I want to be early, not late on Neil Shipley.
Well, let's go ahead and keep that theme going, because I'm in the exact same boat with you on a recently turned pro, Michael Thorbjornsen. He is a guy that was very, very good. Again, just a super, super high prospect here. you go in and you look at the finishes. Yeah, not all of them are great, but we're also getting a guy who's starting to come around, right? So he turns pro, cut at the RBC, cut at the U.S. Open, then cut at the Travelers. But you go to the John Deere in 2023 in the T17, and then you come back Dubai over in the Euro, T11. Then we got a T39 in the Travelers this year. So you see a dude that's kind of starting, again, younger dude, hadn't been on the tour very long, looking to try to figure some stuff out. And then you look, what you start to see whenever you look at some of his other stuff, whenever you look at some of his amateur stuff, you see a guy that when he peaks, we're trying to go for ceilings here. We're playing these outrights. If you want a safe play, I'm sure everyone's pimping Patton Kizzire this week. Like, he is number 2 overall in my model. Throw him in a top 20. Probably a great play this week for you. But if you're looking for spiking, if you're looking for someone who I think can go out and really show you something and get a win, Thorbjornsen is a guy that I am trying to catch on the way up, like you just said, Stephen. I'm trying to catch him on the way up before everybody else catches up to what's going on with him. So modeled out really well for me. And if you talk about birdie or better percentage, just one of the very best birdie makers in all of this field. If we go into the birdie or better percentage, birdie or better gained, et cetera, all those things like that, he is going to be inside your top 7-8 in this field whenever you look at that type of stuff. So, another one of those tournaments, Stephen, for me, I probably won't have an incredible amount of placement markets. I probably won't have an incredible amount of head-to-heads. These tournaments where it could go super, super low, it can get super volatile with all of those, and I don't want to get crushed at the end because my guy shoots 5 under, which should win, but instead the guy he's up against goes 8 under. Things like that. Like, I hate getting crushed when your dude does what he's supposed to do. Like, I don't like that at all. So probably not a ton of those for me this week. Probably just a decent amount of outrights, maybe a top 20 here and there for some of these guys, like I said, where I think the floor is pretty high, but the ceiling maybe not all that high. But I'm ready for us to get over to the Open. That's for sure.
I think Thorbjornsen's a guy we should keep an eye on for stronger events too, at very long courses, because this guy hits the cover off the ball, right, Matt? Like, he's already got elite distance off the tee. And you mentioned the 17th at John Deere last year. I mean, that was as an amateur, so he's still in college. He shows up at the John Deere, I assume, on a sponsor's exemption. I might have to look at Thorbjornsen now. So I have a unit left. I'm deciding whether I just want to fire it on somebody at the top of the board or spray it. I might have to take my shot on Thorbjornsen here because he's had 2 events as a pro now, both obviously elite distance off the tee. One where he was more accurate than the field average, one where he was very much not accurate to the field average. So if we get accuracy off the tee with him to go that distance, my God, he's going to have wedges every hole here. So
yeah, it's going to be fantastic. If everyone's just wondering what my model looked like this week for the guys that I didn't mention, probably no surprise to everyone. Aaron Rai rating out number 1, Sepp Straka rating out really high for me. Of course, Sung JM. I mean, these are kind of the guys that are in a weak field like this, more the class of the field. So I'm sure that's not surprising anyone, Stephen. Rai rates out well, Straka rates out well, Sung JM rates out well. But the odds attached to them, to their win equity, honestly, in a tournament, which I think there's a lot of dudes that can go low and win this thing. I'm just not going to go there with them. Yeah,
the only guy that I'm considering at the top of the board at this point, because I have so many triple-digit guys on my card, and 2 guys, again, fortunate to get a couple guys before Cantley withdrew. But Sung JM would be the only guy I'm looking at the top of the board if I am going to do that. He's figured something out, and he's a guy who catapults to the top of my rankings when I do short courses. Now, this is slightly over 7,200 yards, which is the parameter for short courses. Under 7,200 is considered a short course, but we're in the heat of summer. We're going to get a lot of rollout in the fairways. It's going to play less than 7,200. So Sung JM is a guy who has thrived very much in his PGA Tour career on those shorter courses.
Yep. The only other guy that I was considering that modeled out really well that I have to dig into a little bit further is young Japanese 21-year-old Ryo Hisatsune, Hisatsune, modeled out really, really well for me in this tournament. Haven't really seen a peak performance out of him yet. We've seen a T11 out of him. We've seen a T18. So we haven't really kind of seen that crack into the super high top 5 on the PGA Tour. We've seen some really good finishes over on the Euro Tour from him, but I don't know. Maybe I'll take a I don't know if I'll do an outright on him. Maybe there'll be some sort of placement market deal with him. But
their top Japanese market this week. Can we get a little bit of that?
Maybe so. Because the stuff that I plugged in this week, for whatever reason, he was popping. I just haven't. He hasn't been on my radar, so I don't have enough information to feel comfortable throwing him, definitely saying he's a play. But maybe if you're playing DFS, if you're doing something like that or whatever, he could be a guy that could round out
top
here.
Asian.
Yeah, there you go. So maybe that's the play right there for him. Guys, as we say each and every week, it's free. Everything we do, it's absolutely free. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know in the comment section who you're playing this week. Upper right-hand corner of thelines.com is our Discord. Go in the Discord. Everyone talking every sport all year long in there. We're not too far from football season, so go in there, start getting in on some of those bets a little bit earlier, and maybe that's a sneak peek here because me and Steven are about to start doing some real big preview stuff here for this channel, so you don't want to miss that. For Steven, I am Matt. Good luck on all your bets.